Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Winona City Council. Votes will be conducted by a voice call rather than a roll call unless requested by a council member. This evening, I have a few comments. 2 weeks ago, I was interviewed by two fifth grade reporters from Bluffview Montessori School. During the interview, I was asked a question that went something like this: what is the most important thing that I do as mayor? I thought about it for a second. My mind rolled back through the last year. I thought of public safety, the pandemic, economic issues confronting the city, and constituent interactions that I had had. While thinking about which of these was most important, I quickly came to the conclusion that they all had one thing in common. The most important thing that I, as mayor, or any elected official does is to remind people that everything is going to be okay. No matter how upset someone is, no matter how worried or frustrated with city government a person may be, I do my best to listen, to learn, and to let them know in so many words that everything's going to be okay. We can all have a bad day. Any one of us at any time could be dealing with something at home, work, at school, or within our family. It's our job as Winonans to do our best to understand that someone might be having the worst day of their lives. It's our job to reach out, lend a hand, or a shoulder to cry on. This past week, we lost a longtime volunteer in the Winona Amateur Radio Club. Eric Brom was an employee at TRW for almost 40 years. I met Eric about 5 years ago when my wife and I took over Trinona. Eric was a lead volunteer for all radio communications for the event since its inception. Eric has had a hand in many emergency and natural disaster responses over the years. Eric was a kind man with a true passion for our community. My condolences to his family and friends. We will miss you. About an hour and a half ago, I found out that one of our own neighbors, Kate Carlson, whom has spent years working for Visit Winona and promoting the wonderful place we all live in, was diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma, a blood cancer. Due to her condition and the current COVID-19 precautions in place, she will not be in close proximity to her loved ones during treatment. While her prognosis is good, she will not be able to see her children for almost 2 months. Kate is a wonderful mother, wife, and friend to many. I would ask that if you have the means, please help the Carlson family in this time of need. Please keep Kate and her family in your thoughts and prayers. We are all neighbors. Let's be there for each other this year. Let's listen. Let's care. Let's love one another regardless of our differences. For the upcoming year, I wish all the people of Winona to find joy, peace within, good health, and prosperity. Thank you for the opportunity to serve this wonderful place we all call home. City Manager Chad Ubel, do you have any comments this evening?
Mayor and Council, Happy New Year.
Very good. Thank you, Chad. I will now ask the city clerk to take roll call.
Mayor Sherman.
Here.
Councilman Steve Young,
Here.
Moeller,
Here.
Alexander, Iden,
Here.
Wojciechowski,
Here.
Rapinski.
Present.
Under the required public hearings, item 2.1 is the public hearing on the Sonic and Nelson Annexation Petition for the property located at 22170 Pinecrest Road.
For each public hearing, staff will make a short presentation. Then I will ask if anyone from the public wishes to speak to the matter. You must clearly state your name and address. You will be given up to 3 minutes to make your testimony. I will call 3 times for public comments. Once the hearing is closed, the public may not participate in any discussion by the city council. I believe we have a Carlos Espinoza, city planner, here tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The item in front of you at this time is related to an annexation petition we received from Steve Nelson and Bonnie Sonic at 22170 Pinecrest Road in Wilson Township. This annexation petition was received a couple of months ago, and annexations are typically processed in one of two fashions. The first would be orderly annexation, and the second would be annexation by ordinance. In this case, the request for orderly annexation was denied, so staff is proceeding with forwarding the request to council through annexation by ordinance due to the proximity of city utilities adjacent to the property at 22170 Pinecrest and the proximity to city limits. There's a map in your packets as well as in the resolution that's included in your packets that shows the subject property and its location essentially surrounded by other city properties. As a result, following the public hearing, should council concur with the annexation request, a motion to introduce the attached ordinance for approval would be in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. I will now open the public hearing. Yes.
I just have a question for Carlos. The water trunk line and sewer line, that's already stubbed to the property?
That's correct.
That's correct, okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a
Please.
question as well? Carlos, as long as we have you here, the request for annexation is primarily because of a failed septic, is that correct?
That's correct. My records show that the property owners essentially had a septic inspection done, and the results of that inspection was that it needed to be replaced and could not be replaced according to current regulations. So city sewer and water hookup is necessary.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I will now open the public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, that won't be long enough, but Leon Bowman, Wilson Town Chair, 22827 Garvin Heights Road. I have a few questions and a few comments. We never received a request for annexation of the property from the owners at 22170 Pinecrest. None of our annexation criteria have been met or were met. And is this why you're doing annexation by ordinance instead of by petition, which is usually done by the homeowner? Are they being forced to annex? Now, I understand what Carlos said. We had an orderly annexation agreement and we wouldn't be here today if that was still going on, but we don't have that. So I have a few questions. Is this property currently connected to city sewer?
I believe we'd have to have Carlos answer that.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. I'll mark that as a yes. Was this property sold without passing septic standards? Yes or no? Say yes or no. How many times has this been sold? From what I see from the records, this was sold and there was not hooked up to, it was not taken care of with the septic. That doesn't fly in our township. Well, maybe it does in the city. Just a question. I don't have an answer for it. That's okay. Okay. According to what you're annexing this under is clause 3 of section 2 of this 414.033 sub 2 clause 2, which is what he mentioned as surrounded by city property or city limits. If you take a look at that picture, it's not. But that is not exactly what he was talking about, but it's part of what he brought up. And the city has, and one of the reasons in this clause that you're looking at is that they need to be hooked up. They already are hooked up. So clause 3 is a non-entity. They don't have a septic problem. They don't have a sewer problem. So I don't see how, by the clauses that we have in these statutes, that the city can annex this property. And I think my 3 minutes is probably up. So I'll leave you with that.
Very good. Thank you, Leon. Does anybody else from the public wish to speak on this matter? Please.
Hello, my name is Pat Pulaski. I'm relatively new. I'm in Wilson Township, 2424-2 Pfeiffer Hill Road. I've recently assumed planning zoning for Wilson Township. And the prior statement just struck a chord with me. If the property is under jurisdiction of Wilson Township, and recently, apparently, sewer was hooked up by the city of Winona, I have seen no records of a request for a permit to do so. And that seems like a violation of authority. Did anybody contact Wilson Township on behalf of the city or the property owners? Seems to me to be a case of detrimental reliance and unreasonable expectation. As a new guy, find that hard to buy. Just curious if there was any effort to contact my predecessor about a permit.
Thank you. Does anybody else from the public wish to speak on this matter?
Ernie Culp, I'm on the board of Wilson Township, a supervisor. I'm at 29929 Greenbrier Drive. And yeah, I think it's a violation. We had a setup with Carlos, I believe, to notify us, or at least the resident to notify us before they switched over to city sewer and water. I guess the way I look at it, they're going to pay taxes to Wilson Township and to the city of Winona. That's not fair to the homeowner, but this would have been rectified if somebody would have reached out to us and went through the proper protocols that we have with Carlos and the city of Winona. So I think it's error on your part, and we'd like to know how you guys are going to rectify that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this matter? Again, would anybody from the public wish to speak specifically regarding the Sonic and Nelson annexation petition? Does anybody else from the public wish to speak regarding the Sonic and Nelson annexation petition? Hearing no one, we'll close this portion of the public hearing.
Mayor, are any of the Sonics or Nelsons here? No.
No.
Carlos, could you address some of those concerns that the commissioners brought up?
Sure can. So what happened with this property is the property owners connected to city sewer and water, and the connection was made through a glitch in our system, essentially, that requires properties first to be annexed before they hook up the city sewer and water. So essentially, this was a one-time accident where our system didn't catch the fact that they weren't in the city of Winona when we hooked them up to city sewer and water. We have fixed that glitch in our EnerGov software so that it won't be an issue in the future. And so this annexation request is simply an attempt to rectify that mistake that occurred a couple of months ago here. So they are hooked up to city sewer and water, and all notices were sent out in accordance with past agreements to Wilson Township. As soon as we received the request for orderly annexation that was submitted to Wilson Township, as well as the property owners and everybody else that we normally send notice to, the request for orderly annexation was denied by the township board. And so it is within the city's jurisdiction to be able to annex the property by ordinance. And again, the reason why we're pursuing this is because of the request and the fact that The property is adjacent to city utilities and other city properties as well. So
Carlos, do you know when they were hooked up to city water and sewer?
I don't have the exact date, but as soon as we found out that that is what happened, I worked with the person who did the transfer of the property and notified the property owners to tell them that we need them to annex into the city of Winona in order to continue receiving city services.
So they got hooked in before the current owners purchased the property, is that correct?
I'm not sure as to the exact timing, if it was during the transfer. Well, no. The existing property, the owners have been there the whole time. So the transfer of the property had to do with an adjacent parcel that was sold to the parcel that hooked up. So the property owners were, Bonnie and Stephen were on site and did hook up. It has nothing to do with transition of property. So I don't have an exact date on it, but it was within the past year.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Could I ask, one of the earlier speakers, Carlos, referenced the need for a permit. Was that obtained? Did we miss a step there? Or?
You know, I'm not sure if the property owners or somebody didn't file something with Wilson Township,
Okay.
but everything has been followed in accordance with city regulations, with the exception that they have not been annexed into the city prior to getting the city sewer and water hookup.
Okay.
Eileen, do you have a question?
Yes, so without this annexation, then what happens with their current City of Winona services?
Well, what we don't want to do is cut off city sewer and water service to them. We want to
Sure.
figure out a way to move this forward. We do have some assessments that are due for the city sewer and water service. The problem is if they're not in the city, we technically can't assess it to them. So there's a couple of different issues this is seeking to rectify here. And essentially what this would do is put this property on the same track as what the rest of the properties along Pinecrest will eventually do in the future, which is to annex into the city of Winona.
Okay. And I just, I know you mentioned that all of the proper notices were sent. Did you receive confirmation when those were sent to Wilson Township? Just because it sounds like a few folks are saying they didn't receive that.
Sure, I have it all electronic email communication as well as snail mail, so I can provide that if needed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, George?
Now, are all the neighbors around that property, are they all hooked to city water and sewer?
Only the ones that are in yellow on the map in front of you. Those are the ones that are within the city that are hooked to city sewer and water.
Okay. Now, on Pinecrest, we trunked the main line of water and sewer 10 years ago, 8 years ago,
I think it was more recent than that.
more recent than that, 5 years ago. I know we were taking properties in one-on-one out there as their systems were failing. And
Yes.
of course, with a failing septic system, that's what drives the annexation, so. Thank you.
Any other questions for Carlos?
Mr. Mayor, I would ask
Go ahead.
one final question here, if I could. It was referenced by an earlier speaker that perhaps what we're doing is even unlawful. Have we're confident we're in the right with what we're proposing?
I just defer to Chris Hood.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, we are confident that we have the legal authority to proceed with this. This is an annexation by ordinance under the property owner petition procedure, and we have followed that procedure. And, again, we did seek to have an orderly annexation agreement with the township for this purpose, but they denied that. And so in order to address the issue, the only other way to address this is the way that this has been brought forward by staff under the statutory procedure. So yes, I'm confident that we're fine from a legal standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? No?
Mayor, hearing no other questions and listening to our legal counsel, and we have the authority through annexation with ordinance, I would motion to introduce the attached ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion by George, a second from Eileen. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Under the petitions, requests, and communications, item 3.1 is the temporary wine and malt liquor licenses for Hurry Back Productions.
I will now open the public hearing.
Nope, not a public hearing.
Oh, this one isn't? I'm sorry, it's petition. Sorry about that.
I would move to approve and order administration to approve the licenses.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from George, a second from Aaron. Any discussion?
Oh. Oh,
That guy.
I thought you meant Aaron with an E. I was like.
No, I gave it to him. He kind of got in there first. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Under new business, item 5.1 is the new Minnesota Department of Transportation limited use permits.
I would move to adopt the attached resolutions authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the limited use permits.
Second.
We have a motion from George, a second from Eileen. Any discussion with an E?
Pam's just been called Eileen so many times.
I know.
I am just wondering, as we're moving forward with this, about, I know we had a chance to look at landscaping. Someone contacted myself and probably other council members about concerns about sightlines for pedestrians and bikers because of tree placement, and just wanted to be sure that we were being conscientious about that. I would like trees.
Yeah, and you're talking at crosswalks, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, just so that the drivers aren't, especially as the trees grow and fill out, so that they aren't missing
Right,
pedestrians.
yep. So that's something we can take a look at during construction once we get to that point. Whether
Okay.
we leave them there, move them, eliminate them altogether, it's something we can look at that point, but.
So where they've been proposed in renderings is not set in stone?
Correct, yep, we
Or
can
in
move
the
that at
ground.
any time. Yep.
Okay, great.
Very good. Any other questions, George?
Just one thing on this. I know we talked earlier in the fall about contacting Fleet Farm, about having a meeting with them. I don't know if that's something we would do, the state of Minnesota would do, to get some sort of a traffic pattern in that area as construction begins. So just so we don't lose sight of that. And
Yep.
so all of a sudden, we got a complaint, there's 500 cars coming through here,
Yep.
so.
Yeah, I think that was addressed in the different stages of construction, right? The traffic flow patterns. There's going to be 3 different stages.
Yeah,
remember
you're
correctly.
talking within Farm Fleet parking lot though, correct?
Right,
Yeah,
right, 'cause
so that's
people will-
something.
People will be using.
Oh,
that.
absolutely, yep. Yeah, that's something we would have to address with them.
So,
Yep.
Would that be our responsibility or the state's or both of ours?
It would definitely be ours. We could probably loop the state in just so they're aware of what's going on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 5.2 is the renewal for 2022 workers' compensation and accident plan for city volunteers.
Move to approve the attached resolution.
Second.
We have a presentation from Jessica real
Sorry,
quick,
Jessica.
but I'll remember those. Motion from Eileen, second from Steve.
Mayor and council, tonight we have with us Dustin Lano from Winona Agency to answer any questions you may have.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good evening. Any questions at all? You want to just explain it real quick for us? Give us
Sure.
a short summary of
Yeah.
this.
Good news for the city of Winona. I think one of the things to keep your eyeballs on when looking at the workers' compensation insurance program is the modification factor. This is a factor that ultimately takes your expected losses for workers' compensation premiums and compares that against your actual losses. And the last 3 years of the history of the city of Winona have been favorable. And ultimately, your modification factor has dropped. And that is a good thing for the city of Winona. It means reduced premiums. I guess that's the major highlight of the program. I guess one other note to just point out too is we are seeing some increases in worker compensation rates for specific classification codes, primarily around the police department and fire department codes. That's not specifically from the city of Winona, but more as the League of Minnesota City Insurance Trust files claims for those certain classification codes. We've seen some rate increases in those too as well.
Okay. Any questions at all?
I have a question.
Please, Eileen or Pam. Jeez. My goodness.
Got a perfect
Yeah.
record there, Scott.
Councilmember Iden.
Yes, does this coverage pertain to people who perhaps are working in nonprofit groups that help the city with various things? I'm thinking specifically of a group called Healthy Lake Winona, which is a 501c3 group, but it does go out into the lake park and we do things in the park. There's another group that works on trees for the city. So are they covered as well or not?
As long as they're under the direction of the city, they are covered like a volunteer.
Okay, so it has to be under the direction of the city.
That is correct.
Chad, would you care to comment?
Mayor and council, I'm not sure with your specific example of Healthy Lake Winona because they are not a, city commission. And we would have to go back in our records through HR to make sure that Healthy Lake Winona volunteers have signed the proper volunteer forms to fall under this coverage.
Okay, it might be worthwhile to clarify that in advance before we all go out there. And I know there's a number of groups. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good point. Thanks, Pam. Any other questions, Steve?
Hi, Dustin. Could you please explain to us and reaffirm that we've chosen the, I would call it pay as you go with a return of premium option versus the guaranteed plan, just so we're all on have a level set and understanding of this.
Correct. Yeah, the retro plan. That is an option that historically the city has chosen. And yes, that is the plan that you're recommending today.
Gotcha. Good. And in your experience, past few years here, this has benefited us greatly, has it not?
Yeah. Last 3 years have been very good for the city of Winona for the retro plan. However, there's been years where it hasn't been so good.
Okay.
And so you take some wins and you take some losses.
Yeah.
If you look back at the past 10 years and collectively as a whole, it has been good for the city of Winona. And it's been a good choice and a good program.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Dustin.
Item 3.3 is the Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 75 for police officers, 21 through 22 Memorandum of Understanding.
Make a motion to adopt the attached resolution.
Second.
We have a motion from Eileen with an E and second from George. Any discussion?
Just give us read on this here.
Mayor and council, I'll keep my comments brief, but just to give you kind of an overview. We do have a sergeant who is out on what we would consider long-term FMLA. And so in order to really keep, the effectiveness of the police department operations going, we have this memo of understanding. We were working on this memo of understanding for the last couple of weeks. That's why you also see 2021 to 2022. And again, we're proposing the assignment of Officer Doug Inglet. And again, both parties have agreed to the memo of understanding.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
7.1 is council concerns.
Councilmember Borzakowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Could we have County Recorder Bob Bamanek come at one of our next meetings or pre-council, or actually maybe a public meeting to talk about the transactions and the sales of homes that have been taking that have taken place in Winona during 2021. I think it'd be very, very good information for all of us to hear. I have not heard it yet, but I've heard it in the past. He used to come. I think it's good information for all of us to hear and for the public as well too.
Absolutely.
We can just schedule something for Bob to come down. And also, all I can simply say is Happy New Year to everyone. Have a prosperous New Year, and we'll carry on.
George? Councilmember Iden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Councilmember Mueller?
I would love it. I've been wondering if we could revisit or have a discussion, put something on the agenda about the possibility of having a standing public comment portion of our meetings. We can limit it to time, whatever we need to do, but I've been asking about this for 4 years and I've never really been given a good reason for why we don't do it, other than we like short meetings, which I love a short meeting, but especially with how secure our email has gotten, which is great in many ways, but I hear from people that their emails don't go through. I feel like I miss a lot, and I know, as the mayor mentioned early, it's really important that everyone can give input. So I think it's a really big priority that we allow people to bring things up that we don't normally hear about, because a lot of times we only get emails related to things specifically coming up on the agenda. So
Sure.
let's please talk about it.
Thank you, Eileen. Councilmember Young?
Yeah. One brief thing that I'm really happy the city is following up on, and the mayor has his eye on it as well, and it's the census count. We had a census spring of 2020 when you had a lot of college kids that were gone. And Luke Sims gave me a lengthy reply on how he is really digging into this and making sure, because these numbers numbers of potentially students who could be missing from the count translate directly into dollars. So we're looking at the numbers, the draft numbers that the census is sharing with us from the city of Winona, and Luke and the mayor are looking at this as well. And so hats off to them for looking at this. And I'll follow up and let you guys know how that turns out. But it's super important, and I wanted you guys to know the city is looking at that. So very good.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Councilmember Pinsky?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Moving on to the consent agenda, there are 2 items. The approval of the minutes from December 20th and a claim by the city for damage to a squad car that hit a deer.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second that.
We have a motion from Eileen, a second from Pam. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
7:04. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.